Can't knock what I was saying about him before. Now I just don't like the guy personally.
At last, John Cena confirmed what everyone had been guessing. He's explaining why other wrestlers dislike Hulk Hogan as much as he does. Fans were not aware of Hogan's entire skill set, it turns out. What did Cena reveal? Precisely, and why is he now speaking up? Let's analyze it. There are cases of betrayal and a violation of trust while talking about the top WWE superstars. John Cena will inevitably be mentioned. The 16-time world champion has long been known for his candid criticism of the professional wrestling business. He guided the organization from the period of violent violence and into the PG era. The story of why so many WWE performers harbor a deep dislike for Hulk Hogan reveals a decades-long pattern of betrayal, selfishness, and destructive behavior. Despite the fact that Cena has largely maintained friendly relationships with wrestling legends. To understand the depth of the animosity that exists within the community for Hogan, we must first acknowledge his undeniable accomplishments to the wrestling industry. Hogan's dominance throughout the Hulkamania era in the 1980s and early 1990s made wrestling a global sensation. His significance to WWE's national expansion, his charismatic style, and his ability to engage an audience cannot be overstated. He was the cornerstone of Vince McMahon's professional wrestling career. This superhero urged children to pray, eat their vitamins, and work out hard. But when we look more closely at Hogan's legacy, a much more alarming picture emerges. This is not merely the story of a wrestler who made mistakes or had personality conflicts with his teammates. The most severe criticism of Hogan's character has come from one of wrestling's most admired figures, Jesse "The Body" Ventura. The former governor of Minnesota and renowned wrestler has never concealed his affections for Hogan. When asked if he could patch things up with his old friend, Ventura's answer was clear-cut and quick.
What?
Can't trust him. I'm not friends with anyone I don't trust. I have to have a trust with someone to be their friend. And he's the one that ratted me to Vince when I tried to unionize.
Ventura's remark exposes what many consider to be Hogan's most egregious betrayal of his fellow wrestlers. Ventura coordinated the WWE performers to demand better pay, perks, and health insurance prior to WrestleMania 2, which took place in 1986. Wrestlers were classified as independent contractors with no protection. Furthermore, Ventura's best opportunity to improve working conditions was through their unionization campaign. Even though Hogan was earning more money than the whole locker room at WrestleMania 3, he prioritized his own survival over togetherness. He shared the unionization concept with Vince McMahon, who was able to utterly crush the effort by threatening to fire him. Ventura discovered Hogan's betrayal while suing McMahon over royalties in 1991 confirmed that the information came from Hogan. The repercussions of this betrayal cannot be overstated. In later interviews, Hogan admitted his actions, stating, "I was making more money than anybody and didn't want equal pay, so I opposed unions." This one act of treachery denied a whole generation of wrestlers better working conditions, health, care, and retirement benefits. Ventura acknowledged that he had deceived all of the wrestlers on his roster and all of the wrestlers who came into the business after him. The consequences of Hogan's betrayal are still felt today. Our anti-UN position has been reinforced by Hogan's conduct, which has had a lasting effect on wrestler welfare. There isn't a union as of yet. Peers and wrestling fans have criticized Hogan for turning down improved working circumstances, so putting his own financial benefit ahead of the health of his profession as a whole. This pattern of self-serving behavior continued even after the unionization incident. During his career, Hogan developed a reputation for misusing his authority and creative control agreements to protect his position at the expense of emerging talent. In wrestling, the term Hulkamania politics began to refer to backroom trickery meant to maintain control regardless of what was best for the organization or the wrestling industry as a whole. One of the most famous examples of this behavior is Bret the Hitman Hart, one of the most technically skilled wrestlers and a man whose moral character was never questioned in the ring. Hogan's alleged use of creative control to maintain his position is the reason for the conflict between Hart and Hogan, particularly during WrestleMania 9 in 1993. Although Hogan presents this incident as a misunderstanding, the reality was far more planned. "I'm not doing business with you," Hart retorted, lying about plans for the future and accusing Hogan of not wanting to lose to him cleanly. Hart has called Hogan a fraud and a very limited fighter, accusing his ego of limiting young talent. What wrestling insiders recognized as a trend was best exemplified by this episode. Hogan would use his influence over stories and title decisions to maintain his position, regardless of what was best for the careers of other performers or what made artistic sense. The feud caused considerable tension in Hart's relationship with WWE and increased his hostility for the company, which was then intensified by the infamous "Montreal is a screw job." Perhaps much more worrisome was Hogan's treatment of The Undertaker, one of wrestling's most revered performers and a man whose moral character and professionalism have never been questioned. After their 1991 Survivor Series match, Hogan claimed The Undertaker had injured his neck with a tombstone piledriver. This made The Undertaker anxious about his career because he was still a relatively new member of WWE. However, subsequent camera footage showed that the move was executed perfectly, proving that Hogan had lied to protect his image. The Undertaker has since called it a teaching moment, despite the fact that it led to years of conflict between the two performers. This episode bolstered Hogan's reputation for self-preservation. Later, The Undertaker accused Hogan of fabricating a neck injury to undermine his case. The similar pattern can be seen in Hogan's relationship with Macho Man Randy Savage, who was formerly one of his closest friends and a member of the Mega Powers Tag Team. Their real-life issues stem from jealousy and paranoia, despite the fact that their on-screen dispute provided engaging entertainment. Although Hogan presents this as a misunderstanding, Savage's envy of his ex-wife, Miss Elizabeth, led him to suspect Hogan of inappropriate behavior because of their close relationship. Tensions arose before WrestleMania 9 in 1993, after Savage allegedly slapped Hogan, causing him to sustain a black eye. A documentary claims that Scott Steiner attested to Savage's admission that he had punched Hogan for being disrespectful. These incidents reveal a man whose ego and self-interest regularly took precedence over professional connections and the general well-being off-world of professional wrestling. But perhaps the worst blow to Hogan's reputation was his role in normalizing and legitimizing the use of performance-enhancing drugs in professional wrestling, a practice that would eventually result in a number of premature deaths and health issues among performers. During Vince McMahon's drug trafficking trial in 1994, Hogan testified under immunity and acknowledged using anabolic steroids for more than 14 years. From 1976 to 1990, one of the first public denials that this testimony questioned was his 1991 interview on the Arsenio Hall show, where he downplayed his use of drugs. In the 1980s, Hogan believed that between 75 and 80% of wrestlers he knew used steroids, revealing the pervasiveness of steroid use in the sport. Hogan's testimony helped McMahon's acquittal, but it also imaged his standing as a healthy role model and revealed the shady side of a company that prioritized appearances over the well-being of its employees. Hogan helped create a culture of steroid use that would lead to numerous health problems and early deaths in the wrestling industry for many years to come. But these professional betrayals and backstage fantasies would be outweighed by the personal scandals that would later come to light, revealing an even darker side to the man behind the Hulkamania character and irrevocably altering how wrestlers and fans alike saw their once-loved hero. History marred by scandals. Hogan's public image was founded on wholesomeness and moral integrity. He was the good guy who urged children to take their vitamins, pray, and work hard at their training. His parents trusted him. Children admired him. Wrestling promoters marketed him as the archetypal American hero. But behind this painstakingly crafted exterior was a man whose personal life was unraveling into chaos. His family ties were deteriorating, and his private conversations revealed opinions and ideals completely at odds with his public image. Perhaps the problem that most damaged Hogan's credibility and revealed his moral failings was the racism scandal that surfaced in 2015. The problem was a sex tape from 2007. The consistent pattern of racial language and attitudes in the leaked audio went beyond a single incident of poor judgment, shocking even his most loyal fans. Although Hogan's explanation clarifies his emotional state, it doesn't excuse the recording's content. The leaked transcript claims that Hogan used the N-word multiple times when discussing his daughter Brooke's dating life in order to show his unease over her supposed relationship with a black man. Even more disturbing was another audio clip that surfaced, in which Hogan expressed concern over reincarnation as a black person due to karma after his son Nick's 2007 car accident that nearly killed a friend. The repercussions were swift and disastrous. WWE terminated his contract on July 24, 2015, and removed his whole profile, including his Hall of Fame profile, from their website. When they issued a statement emphasizing their commitment to diversity and inclusion, one of their biggest stars was effectively erased from the company's official history. When asked about his racist remarks, Hogan attempted to provide context and explanation, but his remarks further undermined his credibility, in addition to historical intolerance. This attempt at explanation revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of accountability and duty. Hogan attempted to attribute his words and beliefs to his environment and upbringing rather than taking full responsibility for them, which many observers felt was a feeble defense. This had a direct and lasting effect on his relationships with black wrestlers and spectators. Kofi Kingston of The New Day decided not to interact with Hogan after he was restored because he was furious on a personal level but unconcerned on a business one. According to Mark Henry, it was conflict in the locker room because several wrestlers thought Hogan's apologies were more phony than sincere. Even after being reinstated in 2018, boos persisted in attending events, and wrestlers like Seth Rollins nicknamed him Hogan's own ego is the cause of his lack of respect. The racism controversy was directly linked to another very upsetting time in Hogan's life. Since 2007, the sex tape controversy had been smoldering. Hogan said that the video, which included him with radio personality Bubba the Love Sponge's wife, Heather Clem, was created without his knowledge while he was going through a difficult period and making bad decisions. Hogan was correct to accept responsibility, but the circumstances surrounding the recording revealed patterns in his interpersonal relationships and judgment. Following Gawker Media's release of the tape, Hogan brought a $100 million civil complaint against the company for invasion of privacy in 2012. The case ended in 2016 after a Florida jury the $140 million damages award against Hogan and the $31 million settlement led to Gawker's insolvency. The betrayal by someone he considered a close friend further compounded the situation. This incident revealed not just Hogan's poor judgment in his personal relationships, but also his propensity to surround himself with people who would eventually exploit and betray him. The controversy surrounding the racist remarks found on this sex tape would permanently damage his reputation. Perhaps the most painful aspect of Hogan's personal fall was the disintegration of his family relationships, particularly with his daughter Brooke. The Hogan family gained notoriety through their reality show, Hogan Knows Best, which portrayed them as a close-knit, loving family. Eventually, it became evident that the reality was far more complex and worrisome. Brooke Hogan has openly stated that she has experienced significant verbal and mental abuse since she was a young child, which frequently turns into physical assault. She made it apparent that there were complexities in the family relationships that went far beyond what the general public thought, and that the reasons behind her decision to stop communicating with both parents were completely different. She also made it clear that the abuse was not committed by the person you might think. The dissolution of Hogan and Linda's marriage added to his public humiliation and personal failure. Their 2009 divorce was extensively publicized due to accusations of adultery, including an affair with a close friend of their daughter, Brooke. Linda publicly criticized Hogan as a liar and sex addict during her media appearances. The family's issues were exacerbated by the awful car accident involving Hogan's child, Nick, in 2007. Nick, who was 17 at the time, was involved in a major car accident while racing his Toyota Supra while intoxicated. His passenger, former Marine John Graziano, had severe brain damage that would require lifelong care. The Graziano family sued the Hogans and reached a settlement of roughly $1.5 million following legal and medical costs. Hogan also faced criticism for his offensive comments during Nick's incarceration, in which he said that Graziano's injuries were an essential component of God's design. These comments, which revealed a callousness and lack of humanity, further damaged his reputation and relationships within the wrestling world. The combined effect of these several scandals resulted in a portrayal of a man whose private life diverged greatly from his public persona. The virtuous family man who promoted training, prayers, and vitamins turned out to be someone whose own family had been destroyed by abuse, whose relationships with others had been marked by betrayal and poor judgment, and whose private conversations had revealed opinions that contradicted everything he claimed to believe. For wrestlers who had looked up to Hogan as a role model and leader in the sport, these revelations were particularly distressing. Rather, the man who was supposed to symbolize the best aspects of professional wrestling became a symbol of dishonesty and moral shortcomings. His actions not only damaged his own reputation, they damaged the reputation of the wrestling business overall. In essence, these individual flaws would have a significant impact, transforming the way the wrestling community views leadership, accountability, and the responsibilities of being the industry's spokesperson. The consequences over time and industry responsibility. Despite the wrestling industry's long-standing reliance on fantasy characters and compelling storylines, Hogan's career brought to light the dangerous intersection of real responsibility and imagined bravery. Wrestlers leave the ring carrying the burden of their public personas and the expectations of fans who have taken an emotional interest in their roles. Hogan's shortcomings extended beyond his personal shortcomings. They betrayed the trust that a whole generation of business people and wrestling fans had placed in him. John Cena, the top babyface in WWE, has often been compared to Hogan, demonstrates a stark difference in how you handle the responsibilities that come with being a representative for a wrestling company. He credits Hogan's influence for Cena's accomplishment of surpassing Hogan's Make-A-Wish record with over 650 wishes fulfilled. In contrast, Hogan took use of his position to further his own interests at the expense of his comrades. While Cena has consistently defended his integrity and stood up for his fellow wrestlers both inside and outside the ring, the differences in their approaches to industry leadership were particularly evident when comparing their divergent interactions with emerging talent. While Hogan was notorious for his Hulkamania politics and inability to promote younger performers, Cena built his reputation by supporting emerging talent and ensuring the survival of the wrestling industry. This crucial difference in philosophy reflects a broader change in wrestling culture that values partnership over self-preservation. Hogan made a helpful comparison between John Cena's heel flip and his early 2025 Unwo formation. When John Cena turned heel, I expected more of the same. You didn't feel as though a ton of titles were being thrown at you. even though this might seem like standard wrestling commentary. It emphasizes the ongoing tension between Hogan's generation and contemporary wrestlers, who have distinct objectives and values. Hogan's battle with substance abuse throughout his career serves as more evidence of the industry's inability to protect artists' health and well-being. His candid acknowledgement of his struggles with prescription drugs and fentanyl addiction is a prime example of the psychological and physical toll professional wrestling has on wrestlers. This terrible tale of addiction and rehabilitation reveals the human cost of a wrestling culture that prioritized performance over the well-being of its participants. It's amazing how Brooke Hogan explains her father's operations. It's the fact that Hogan's opposition to unionization contributed to the development of an industry structure that failed to provide wrestlers dealing with such difficulties with the support and care they needed only serves to highlight the tragic irony of his legacy. The political problems that arose later in his career further distanced Hogan from many in the wrestling community. His vocal support of divisive candidates and his participation in fiercely partisan rallies increased tensions within a field that is becoming increasingly diverse and inclusive. Hogan's decision to become so involved in party politics was another departure from the unifying force he was destined to be, even if wrestlers have the freedom to hold political views. For a company that draws followers from a variety of political beliefs, particularly for wrestlers from diverse backgrounds, Hogan's political involvement was just another cause of disillusionment and divisiveness. Hogan's complex connection with his family, particularly his estrangement from his daughter Brooke, is arguably the most heartbreaking illustration of how his personal failings affected those closest to him. Despite the affection expressed in their final conversation, their relationship remained tense until his passing. Through a text message from her brother Nick to her husband, Brooke learned of his passing. In her posthumous homage to her father, Brooke gave Molly Jean Alexi, Hulk's daughter, Jean, her middle name. Despite their remoteness from one another at the time of his death, this gesture suggests that she still loved him very much. Instead of hostility or indifference, what makes their relationship tragic is the recognition that love alone was not enough to mend the damage caused by years of dysfunction and poor choices. It's important to understand that the reasons why wrestlers like John Cena and other business experts dislike Hogan go beyond simply envy or personal dislike. It stems from an awareness that Hogan's actions caused significant harm to the wrestling industry and its participants. Due to his betrayal of the unionization effort, wrestlers were not granted basic rights and benefits that would have prevented many injuries and premature deaths. His behind-the-scenes politics cost other performers money and opportunities. His personal scandals damaged professional wrestling's reputation because the sport placed a higher value on performer safety, diversity, and accountability. Some of the issues that plague Hogan's age may have been avoided thanks to the extensive wellness programs, anti-bullying policies, and support systems that the contemporary WWE has implemented. However, the fundamental problems that Hogan's career exposed, such as the lack of union representation, the pressure to perform in spite of injuries, and the ego-driven political culture, continue to have an effect on the profession. John Cena's leadership style is entirely different from Hogan's. Hogan's defense of his position and hoarding of opportunities promoting up-and-coming musicians, and using his platform to advocate for positive change, have become Cena's careers. Cena's record-breaking Make-A-Wish participation demonstrates a genuine commitment to the responsibilities that come with being a wrestling icon, rather than just abusing his position for selfish gain. The reason why so many contemporary wrestlers are so disenchanted with Hogan is due to the difference between these two approaches to become a wrestling celebrity. It's more than what he did wrong. It has to do with the things he could have done more effectively. Given his influence and position, Hogan might have had a positive effect on the wrestling industry. Instead, his legacy is one of strained relationships and missed opportunities. It all boils down to the importance of using one's platform responsibly and the long term consequences for current and future wrestling stars of prioritizing one's own interests over the welfare of the community. The fact that wrestlers like John Cena, who never worked directly with Hogan during his tenure, yet harbor reservations about him, shows how his actions have had a long-lasting impact on wrestling culture. These feelings are driven by an awareness that Hogan's choices had a big influence on the profession and continue to affect performers today, not by personal animosity. We appreciate you watching. To continue the journey and view more amazing content, click on one of the suggested videos that is already showing on your screen if you liked it.